Now, I'm not getting overexcited, but could it just be possible that after a positive showing in pre-season testing, Williams could be on the verge of actually having a half-decent car? A car which more accurately can finally allow Alex Albon to show us what he can do and hopefully not what he can't do. And I say this because overall he's really impressed during his time at Williams so far. After hauling the car on occasion into Q3, scrapping for points, sure they may not have been top 6 places, but all these little ones add up at the end of the year. And it's vitally important that all these little points add up at the end of the year, because since Albon's been part of Williams, it's effectively been a one-man team. Because as full-time teammates, he's just had the likes of Nicholas Latifi and Logan Sargent to deal with. And just in case you think I'm being cruel, they are now both considering careers outside motorsport, so take from that what you will. And so now I think there is an argument, now that Alex has done all the heavy lifting at Williams for the last 3 years, he is now ready to step up and reap some rewards. After all, he has scored 43 of Williams' total 53 points from 2022 till 2024. So if that's not carrying the team on your back, then I don't really know what is. And so if the pace that Williams showed at pre-season testing is genuine, then the natural step up should be regular Q3 appearances and regular points. And so that he's shown that he has the talent and composure to race amongst the big boys. So with a fast car and team behind him, surely now there isn't a force outside Williams that could stop him. Well, maybe, but what I'm more concerned about is the forces that have arrived inside Williams, namely Carlos Sainz, and all the extra attention and all the extra expectation that goes with that. But just before we go any further, please subscribe to the channel, show your support, and let me know your comments below on Albon's prospects for 2025, and if you're feeling really saucy, 2026 too. Cheers for watching. Now, I've always held a certain level of affection for drivers that show glimpses of quality and raw talent, but are just let down ultimately by the machinery. The kind of drivers who can outdrive their car's shortcomings and put it into positions on the grid where it really has no business being. And this brings us neatly over to Alex Albon, the guy who has been the bedrock of Williams since 2022 after he replaced the departing George Russell. Now, due to financial issues and things that have become clear in later years, Williams had to grab money from pay drivers such as Nicholas Latifi, and who may or may not have been a pay driver but surely had some corporate intervening done, Logan Sargent. Which means that Williams could only field one competent driver at a time, and in this case it was Alex Albon. Granted though, Alex began his time at Williams on loan from Red Bull following his disappointing stint there. But in time, the outlook of the team improved, the finances improved, James Vowles came on board, and Alex Albon became a fully fledged Williams driver, finally ripping the Red Bull logo off his helmet once and for all. And so now Albon was perfectly poised. He was his own man and was now at a team with a clear vision and clear rebuilding strategy for the years ahead. It appeared that he had really found himself a happy little home over at Williams. And the team seemed to like him too. He was fast and consistent on track, he was a likable character and brought in the fans and just generally came across like a thoroughly good bloke. But let's not forget though, this was an Alex Albon that came across very differently from the chap who we found over at Red Bull, who appeared to buckle a lot under pressure, didn't handle teammate battles very well, and generally got in his own head a lot. But ultimately, the critical thing here is the teammate factor. Because over at Red Bull, he had Max Verstappen to deal with, and that is probably the biggest baptism of fire you could possibly have in terms of a driver next to you. The level of just sheer expectation must have been insane. But then moving down the grid to Williams, he was next to the likes of Latifi and Sargent on a full-time basis, who he could comfortably outclass every Grand Prix weekend. Because there was simply no threat from them in qualifying or the races, and this caused Albon stock to skyrocket because the massive teammate factor that we talked about was no longer there. And so potentially the biggest thing that affected his confidence and shook him in the past just didn't exist at Williams. And now his clear natural talent and capabilities could shine through at Williams without any hindrance. It really looked like he was on the up and up, especially during 2023. But one day, a little chap from Argentina showed up in the Williams garage named Franco Colapinto, signed to replace the outgoing Logan Sargent. And because this was a very sort of hurried together replacement for Sargent, really, there wasn't really any great expectations here. But as the season went on, Colapinto went on to show that he was a clear upgrade from his predecessors. And whilst he didn't blow Albon out of the water in terms of performance or results, there was a clear shift in Albon's mentality and just generally how he approached F1 at the time. Something was clearly off. Now, that might have been the media going into absolute overdrive, or it could have been having a competent teammate alongside him. But overall, rightly or wrongly, question marks started to appear alongside Albon's name. And now fast forward to the 2025 preseason, Albon finds himself in a very different team to what he found this time last year. Because the FW47 appears to look promising, the team rebuild appearing to now be in full swing with new sponsors coming on board, as well as race-winning pedigree driver Carlos Sainz. And this is why 2025 is critical to show everybody, and possibly himself, that he can deliver in a capable car firstly, but also not be rocked by quality teammates. Now, from what I saw, especially compared to Carlos Sainz, Albon seemed to have a relatively quiet winter break. After all, Sainz was making all the headlines, and rightfully so, because he's at a new team and it's exciting and everything, but Albon has been quietly working away, not really drawing much attention to himself. And that's potentially a very tactical move, allowing the wave of interest to wash over Williams from Sainz's arrival, but once the interest dies down, that's a better time to start making noise about your prospects for the season ahead. Now, fortunately for Albon, his new teammate Carlos Sainz appears to be a nice guy. He seems intelligent, cooperative, and focused to the team's cause. So he's not teaming up against an emotional brick wall, for example. But what I hope he realizes is that this is a great chance for him to learn a lot from Sainz, take on some of his life lessons and experiences. Both have a lot in common after all. They both came up through Red Bull and they started life at Toro Rosso, so potentially cut from the same cloth, and there's hopefully going to be a bit of mutual respect from one another. And so, if both have their heads screwed on, then the core focus should be to push Williams up the Constructors' Championship standings. But then for Alex Albon, we're here talking about his time to shine. What exactly does success look like for him in 2025, and what are our expectations for him? Well, given Carlos Sainz's caliber and background, I sense that a successful season for Albon would be to match or be in reach of Sainz throughout the season in terms of race results and also qualifying performance too. I don't think many people over the course of a season are expecting Albon to beat Sainz, but you never know. Right place, right time. You never know what could happen. But still, having said that, being close to each other in races, more or less matching each other in qualifying, that would be a monumental achievement for Albon at this stage. Now, you may disagree with me on that, and if you do, let me know in the comments, of course, but that would still be, in my eyes, a massive step up from what we saw from Albon, especially in the final third last year. And by putting in some solid performances this season, not only will Albon be able to rid himself of this whole affected by teammates factor, he might be able to build himself a whole new reputation, not just from Williams, but also F1 fans on the whole. Now, Albon is contracted at Williams until the end of 2026. Carlos Sainz, though, is there on a 2-year deal, which is most likely a 1 + 1 year deal. So that's a 1-year option after he finishes this season. Which means that there's still this lingering possibility that even if Williams are successful this season, Sainz could still jump ship. With question marks on the future lineups at Red Bull, Mercedes, or even Ferrari if their lineup goes totally wrong and implodes, a fast track for Sainz to one of those teams to rejoin at the front of the grid and straight into a race-winning seat could be a very real option for him. Which means that I think there is a chance for Albon to show Williams that, hey, you might have your new flashy does-everything toy in Carlos Sainz, but I am your dependable guy who's going to be there with you no matter what. And also deliver as well. Basically, Carlos Sainz is Buzz Lightyear and Alex Albon is Woody. And so for a large portion of this season, Williams won't really be able to lean on Sainz as much as they'd like to, because there's still no saying as to what he's going to be doing next season. Next season being 2026. Because you have to ask, is he really that prepared to put in 3 to 4 years hard work to get possibly a podium position, or would he rather just be teleported over to Red Bull or Mercedes, where he will most likely start winning races again? And this is where I sense Alex Albon could really come into his own and be the guy who Williams can rely on and be a consistent bedrock to build these new foundations around. Having Sainz on board is great, obviously, but they can't really go full speed ahead yet until they know what he wants to do for the next 2 or 3 years. You have to wonder how much access Carlos Sainz has to their 2026 car until he is signed, sealed and delivered for the 2026 season. Now, a massive advantage that Albon has is having worked with the team and its engineers and people and everyone that makes the team move and makes the car go fast since 2022. He's already built relationships with the team, he's already knowing the engineers, so from that respect, he already has a 3-season head start on what Sainz has. And surely you think that has got to play advantage to some sort of level somewhere in the team. Now, of course, finally, I don't think anyone would want this to happen, but we have to consider this eventuality as well. We've talked about this season being Albon's chance to shine, but of course, he really has no other option but to right now. Especially alongside Carlos Sainz, he kind of has to shine, or he could be in serious trouble. Because if throughout the season we start to see a destruction of Albon by Sainz over performances, lap times and qualifying, with no real reply from Albon either, this is where the questions might start popping up. And the sad thing is we've all seen it happen, and as much as I support Albon, we've all seen it when there's a slightly more positive approach on his teammate and perhaps he's having an unlucky time, a bad period, the car isn't there, the head does drop and he can go inside himself a bit. And those are totally human responses and that sort of thing is fine, but the critical thing here is getting up from them and overcoming them. And I sense in that respect, that makes Sainz the more complete driver, especially considering what he's had to put up with at Ferrari for so many years. We've all seen Sainz having to get back up multiple times from bad luck and poor Ferrari strategy, and he does exactly that. He dusts himself off, brushes himself down, and gets on with it. And this is where we're going to see if he can do exactly the same thing. Brush himself down, dust himself off, overcome any struggles and become the driver that Williams really needs him to be at this stage. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he does, if he finishes ahead of Sainz, if he's going to be that far behind him, who knows. Let me know in the comments, let me know if you think he's going to be a massive gap in performance, if they're going to be more or less the same, let me know below, and also give the video a like, and also click the subscribe button as well. And as always, I'm Paul, thanks for watching, cheers.